Alright, looks like we're live. Let me just double check the audio. I turned the volume up about 10%. Alright, looks like we're live. Okay. And then also I turned off the display power setting that made it shut off and messed up our stream a couple times. So let me just tweet this out. Alright, this is using my Twitter app that you can check out at glitch.com/Hogumadi. Maybe someday I'll give the origins of what that means. But yeah, since it's a Twitter login app and you can't use it from within an iframe, you have to click on visit and you can view the source to make sure nothing weird's going on, and you can view the readme just to see what it's all about. And what you see here is basically the next iteration that I'll release at some point. So I've got a Patreon, not that I'm like sitting here trying to beg, but just so you know. And today chat is open, no restrictions. So I haven't posted here for a while, but nothing's changed about what I'm doing. I'm obviously working on different things. Here's the carputer that I developed while I was living in my car, and for the last 6 months I've been learning Python. And for political reasons, I can't code here. Looks like a perfectly fine spot to code. For political reasons, I can't code here. Not to mention, you'll hear me start to breathe through my mouth as my nose clogs up from the dust down here. If politically I could code here, then I would invest time to, vacuum up the dust and stuff. But yeah, I go to a coffee shop for anywhere from 3 to 6 hours, and then the library for another 3 or so hours, and code there. So got pretty good at Python. And now, since I can't afford to go to the cafe anymore, I have to do other things. And I've been a programmer for a long time. I've owned a vendor / agency. I've worked for agencies / vendors. I've worked for big tech. I've specialized. I did a stream yesterday. It's on unlisted now because halfway through the audio messed up and the video messed up, and it's not just that it was like robotic, it's that it was like literally cutting out like every 1 second for like half the video. So yeah, when you start going to the gym, it's good to not set down a routine. Just like go and see how to use the equipment and do whatever you want to do. For the important part is just 45 minutes every day, and then you'll start reading maybe between sets, maybe when you go home, and then you'll figure out where you're weak, what kind of routines you need to improve your weakness. And after like a month or 3, whatever, then you can start looking into the fancy 3 or 5 day split routines, etc. So that's where I am now. So like 4 or 5 years ago, I started making streaming software. I made this channel, and I made the software on this channel. So if you go back like 4 or 5 years in the channel history, you'll see me using the same equipment to build a live streaming app. And that was in Clojure, which I'd love to be using Clojure, but it's not available in the Windows Store. Up here is remnants from the stream that I did yesterday. And something I should do is see if the local copy of that stream is messed up. So a problem that I have is my disk is almost full. How much space do I have? This PC, kind of new to Windows still. Oh, I guess I have 2 gigs free, so I could, in theory, SCP the file over, because for some reason the audio doesn't play through the remote desktop. Usually logs in faster. There we go. In the last stream that's still up on my channel, I talked about why I can't just go get a job. I've done it several times. And at this point, to repeat it would be insanity. So I've got to figure out my own thing. Gotta like, even though I breathe through my nose all the time, it's starting to get stuffed already. So, and I know I sound different and my posture starts to change when I start mouth breathing. Yes, I was a mouth breather for part of my life. Alright, so it's a little bit distorted from stretching, I guess. Why is it so slow today? Good lord, that welcome screen just popped up. This is the Raspberry Pi 3 that I'm logged into. It's got 1 gig of RAM. This is the Raspberry Pi 4, and it's got 8 gigs of RAM. Come on, man. Did I not click? That's gonna open like 7 of them. Okay. Look, what did I say? Right, is this thing even going to be able to play back this video? Where we are at allegedly November 3rd, according to this thing's clock, which is always wrong. might be the one. What I'm looking for is to see if the video is really choppy. I'm unsure why the audio doesn't play. I've got it set to enabled, but it just doesn't. This is only 10 minutes as well. I don't know. So yeah, I'm gonna have to use a PC with more resources to watch that, figure it out. But I thought it was a pretty good stream. It was about creating a sustainable business. And basically here, I figured out it's about $5 a day for my coffee. You know, call it 5 times a week, 4 weeks a month, $100 a month. So it ends up being about $600 to learn Python. And most people who I've known, you know, not people I grew up with, but people who I knew like in my 20s and 30s, can't even fathom being so poor that $5 a day for coffee is going to be a problem. And if they hear me say that I can't code because I can't pay $5 a day for coffee, it's going to just sound like making excuses. And so I've been working on a project called the Physics of Homelessness, or the Homeless Data Project, to help people over here understand what it's like to know that, say you have $1,000 in savings, and every day it costs, you know, $10 for food. If you want to do transit, it's like $4, coffee $5, so $20 a day. That means you have basically 25 days until you have $0. And that means every day, 25, 24. That's a pretty small number of tick marks to be wiping off, you know. So, you know, the obvious thing that someone would say to a homeless person is get a job. Well, okay, so 25 days until the first paycheck, pretty reasonable. Once you start having like less than 2 or 3 weeks worth of money, 21 days, then, you know, you're not going to be eating the last few days before you get your paycheck. And that's kind of a problem if you have a job, right? So suddenly your work performance goes down because you can't afford to eat anymore. You can't afford to take the bus to the gym anymore or to work anymore. Well, that's why you save your last few dollars to keep going and then get that paycheck. I know. But man, sometimes you just get to that point where you can't even afford to take a shower anymore. And I've been to that point where people can tell me to get a job and I can say I can't afford to take a shower. They're not going to hire you if they know you're homeless. Like, not supposed to say like. Guaranteed. So yeah, I can't code here. I can work on my book here. I can work on the data stuff here, which is what these receipts are. Go back to past videos. Seems like you got a lot of skills. Just making excuses. I know. Seems like that. So, yeah. Yesterday's stream I talked about different ways to monetize. So you got glitch. Well, that's not a monetize. That's You can say Gumroad is what I probably meant to say. Indeed, I have some software for sale there. We have Fiverr. Indeed, I've tried to sell services there. We have Teespring. Indeed, I have some illustrations available on t-shirts. We have, getting more technical, Rapid API. I can make some services for my Gumroad apps there. I haven't done that yet. That's something I probably shouldn't do here, because it's going to definitely involve some coding. So that's the kind of thing, say I allocate Saturday and Sunday $10 a week to go code at the library or at the coffee shop. Why not the library? Well, the library opens at noon every day except Thursday to Saturday, where it opens at 9. And then, well, it's Thursday now. Go over there, buddy. So yeah, I'm basically establishing a new routine now. And I need to figure out stuff I can do here. So, Rapid API, Gumroad, Fiverr, Teespring. What else have I done? Shopify. Indeed, I've put the computer for sale on Shopify. So yeah, I mean, like, what else? Like algorithms and data structures, I've studied that so much. I could probably still pass that portion of an interview. Like, that's always been the easy part of tech interviewing for me. The problem is I just plain can't work in tech, except possibly as a freelancer because of insurance reasons. So it's like if someone, I mean, you guys know how insurance works. Like, sometimes you just can't do stuff because of insurance. So then we've also got, what's that? Mailing list or whatever, newsletter service. Anyway, I think Gumroad's better than that service, Substack. So yeah, I do have a subscription service set up on my Gumroad, which I determined is probably better. We got MailChimp. I have a MailChimp set up. Another thing I offered on Shopify was mentorship by the month. And so MailChimp was set up basically for that. So yeah, these are different ways you can monetize an online business that exists today that didn't really exist when I started working for employers. And then, you know, there's just straight up marketing. So YouTube, where we are now. Twitter. You can get in their DMs after maybe a month of interacting with them. Twitch, I'm not sure how one would sell on Twitch. So the thing is, I'm not trying to sit here and be a content creator, and so my production value is never going to be great. Like, I'm not going to probably have, I just don't imagine having a content, unless I can get like AI or hire somebody to be a content person for me. My specialty is deep work, innovation, And, you know, nothing against content people, so-called content creators. It's just not, you know, there's an overlapping skill set. Ultimately, content creators have to create content about something. And so that's the overlap. If I were to be a content creator, it would be about, you know, maybe sustaining myself as someone who's not a content creator. Or maybe content creator would be, you know, one of my multiple streams of income. Which, how much do I need for income? $1,500 a month. Multiple streams of income is the way that we should do it. So yeah, I mean, the short version of the last video that's on my channel is I was canceled in 2016. I was able to limp along in tech for another 2 years, but it became clear that there was back channel defamation happening, and I tried to get a lawyer, but I didn't try that hard because I just wanted to push forward. And so I took a huge income cut, moved into my car, started working labor and service jobs. Critics who want to jump on the channel will say that I won't lower myself. The cover image of yesterday's video was various accusations that my trolls from people who used to know me say. And a future stream that I'm going to do is basically the special case of cyberbullying and domestic abuse, and you know, so there's this point where when you've been successful and left a lot of people behind, they become haters. But then when you're canceled after being successful and there's a pandemic and you have nowhere to go except back to your old life, then suddenly you're in a crab bucket with all of these haters, and maybe you didn't know they were haters before, but when you interact with them, they make it clear that they hate you. And by that time, you know, I avoided going back to that situation for as long as possible, but pandemic made it possible no longer. And maybe if I had known what I was going to come back to, I would have avoided it even longer. But I thought, okay, well, there's something called love bombing. And, you know, the love bombing became too tempting, and so I got love bombed and then hated after I was trapped. So now I'm trapped, and yeah, for political reasons, I'm not going to code in this house. I'll code out at a cafe or at a library, but not here. I don't want to keep saying I said on yesterday's stream, which is now on private, due to technical issues, but yeah. So there's like the the legend that right when I got here, one of my relatives brought up to me that a person used like 38 cents of their employer's electricity, and the employer brought them to court. And then, their company was successful. The employer brought them to court and got a share of their company. So I'm like, why are you guys thinking about this kind of stuff? And then there's the, ubiquitously known story from the Facebook movie of the artist who took equity instead of cash and became a millionaire for painting the office walls. So, there's going to be people who are going to, exaggerate what they've offered me. And maybe they won't take me to court, but they'll, play it up like, oh, I should have had this when I get successful again. And yeah. So basically, how do I combine these sources to get up to $1,500 a month so that I can basically get the heck out of this situation? And then there's the basic Patreon, which is people just give me money because I create valuable content. So I say me, I'm not like this special thing. It's just I don't know. I've been a specialist for a long time. It's not to say that being a specialist is the only way. I made very good money as a specialist, and it would be great if I could be a specialist again. But where that fails is multiple streams of income. And that's partially my fault, but also just being a specialist, you do dedicate 60, 80 hours a week of your time to staying on the cutting edge of whatever you're specializing in. Networking with other people who specialize in what you specialize in. So yeah, once you're canceled, that network dries up, and it's obviously not worth continuing to specialize in that thing anymore, because anywhere you go, the doors are going to be closed on you. So now that I'm in the point where I can't really afford $5 a day for coffee anymore. I gave learning Python all of my energy for 6 months. I let my phone service cut off. All my bills are behind. So I sort of need a Hail Mary in this time to catch up my bills. Get my car back. Insurance costs money, gas costs money. Costs money to eat, and, well, if all I have is a car, then I can't really eat the car. And so I might have to trade the car for money, right? Might be in the form of a loan and not a sale, so that if I can get money and start paying the loan back, I can get the car back. But I can't really eat the car, and so I need to get this money. This isn't a lot of money in the US either. This is federal poverty line. And if you're in a city, this is really not going to go that far. If you live in a car that's paid off, well, it doesn't really matter where you live. You might as well live where you've got the most opportunity. Especially if you're a vegan or vegetarian living in a place without a snowy winter, which usually has a lower cost of living, might actually be cheaper overall, because you don't have to pay to get the food shipped in all winter. So for me, I've lived in California for a decade. I paid all of my taxes since I graduated university there. So if I'm going to go to a homeless shelter, it should probably be there, but then the homeless shelters there are full. So it's not really fair to go to a homeless shelter in some random Midwestern town. Homeless people don't think about fairness. They're just big mooches. What are you talking about? You're just making excuses. Just trying to run some kind of fraud, some kind of grift. So yeah. I don't want to get to the point where I literally can't afford food anymore. And it really stinks that I can't code here, because, you know, that would make life a lot easier, a lot cheaper. So yeah, now that I'm pretty good at Python, it makes sense to invest in going to meetups. And like 6 months ago, we were just barely coming out of lockdowns, right? So meetup culture wasn't really... Like, I went to a meetup in May, the only one I've gone to in like a couple years. And people were still kind of like... You know, it was like people's first meetup in years. And we got bugs coming down from the ceiling too. Fun times. So yeah, like, meetups might be coming back now. And now I have skills. So I mean, overall, this was an excellent investment, I would say. And if I could be working a minimum wage job, I would be doing it. But I cannot because of HR. So yeah, I mean, we've got retail, trade, professional. So I've spent most of my life in professional, starting at retail, and I've gone back to retail and trade. So to work a trade, basically, you know, I don't want to waste somebody's time training me only for me to quit and go into tech, because I feel called to do this sort of data intellectual type work. I mean, another thing too is, you know, I could almost say that there's open source, and that could be software or data, and then we could say that there's me somewhere in between content creator and open source. And a big function of what I haven't done is marketing. So content creators obviously market, and a lot of times they get sponsors. You know, they're maybe influencers. You know, maybe that's... Influencer might be a better term than content creator, because they basically create content to grow their audience and get sponsors. Like, it is their job. They know knowing the algorithms is a big part of marketing. Which is actually kind of a full circle thing, because when I first started this channel, I talked about algorithmic bullying, which is basically being canceled. I don't know if there was really a word for being canceled in like 2016, 2018 era when I started this, or if it was on my radar. Very tasty. It's coffee with coconut cream. So yeah, marketing, algorithms. So you gotta know the algorithms to market. Like, I probably do these streams at like the worst possible times. You know, it's like, well, people are at work, and depending if that's my audience, people who are at work, entrepreneurs who are working, you know. Yeah, as far as content creation goes, I've got years and years and years of content, and it's all raw, unscripted, unproduced. It's just like content of me creating. You know, that's another thing too. Like, open source programmers are creators, but they're not content creators. And they are kind of influencers as well. But it's like, there's a lot, you know, like these people could have teams behind them. So they have one brand, which is their name, but then, you know, like authors have ghostwriters. They could have like, you know, people running social media accounts for them. They could have people doing market research for them. They could have people coding their apps. There's nothing wrong with that. It's because they're just building their own personal brand using multiple people, which means they've got like management in their skill set as well. So yeah, I made like a lot of data tools, and I've talked about a content pipeline. So like in theory, I could hire someone to run my social media brands, producing the content that I create. But how quick would we get returns? You know, would it be just burning money because I'd have to pay them for a month, but I don't have enough money to pay them for a month before we start getting income, right? So I started off yesterday's talk with so time is what money? Most people would say time is equal to money, but actually time is greater than or equal to money. Wealthy people use money to buy time. And so at its worst, the equal case, time is money. That's where you're a service business selling your time to work on someone else's business. And the reason that that is problematic is the same reason that I'm not coding here, which is it actually puts your intellectual property at risk. Because if you have one stream of income and it's for someone else's business and you're in a weak position, then they're going to exert their leverage and make you sign, possibly different agreements. So one might be intellectual property, one might be non-compete, intellectual property assignment, non-compete. So if you're a freelancer, usually you own the copyright to what you do because you're delivering a service, not material work in the form of code and documentation and whatnot. So you can make a product out of what you do if you still retain the copyright. And I talk about that a little bit in the README of the Twitter app that I published. So yeah, basically, I can't accept open source contributions unless I have a copyright assignment. And that's just because I'm trying to protect my intellectual property so that I can relicense the work commercially. So when people have a business and they're paying you money for your time, they want to keep their intellectual property so that they can relicense out their business as well, or sell it cleanly in a acquisition or merger. And so, yeah, usually you want to be delivering something more like a product as a freelancer. So you got to have good leverage to be able to do that. Otherwise, they'll just hire you as a regular employee, and then you'll have to sign, various things that could threaten your intellectual property, especially non-competes. And then anyway. So yeah, getting freelance is good. And yeah, like all of these things take time. So I built up my Python skills. So I could, if I had a place to work, make some rapid API stuff. I could probably make educational content. I could sell installation of various software, but I didn't specialize in any software like Django. Flask, but that's, as basic as you can get. And it's, something that you build a lot of other things on top of. It's not like closer to a solution. Like back in the day, there was like PHP saying like Magento Commerce, installing like Magento and setting it up would be like a service, but Flask, it's so bare bones that it's not going to be, it's nowhere near a solution. It's sort of like something that you would make a product on top of. So, like setting up WordPress is probably more universally understood. But yeah, now that I'm good at just like vanilla Python and foundational tool like Flask. And one can ask, why didn't I get back into PHP? Like I did PHP back in like the 3, 4, a little bit into 5 days, many years ago, like pre-Nginx, back in the Apache days. And so, I could have spent my time updating those skills as well. I think it's not available in the Windows Store. I think I looked. But basically, Python being in the Windows Store, because that $250 laptop is in S mode, it can only run signed code. That was sort of my constraint. And I actually bought that laptop because I was shopping for screens for this guy, but I ended up finding that it was cheaper to just get a laptop than a screen, and so I went that route. You know, it is what it is. I still could have hooked that thing up to the laptop and, you know, done the remote X session like you saw me do a little bit ago as well. So, but yeah, Python, it's just, I mean, it's, my intuition said go with Python, so I did. So I could, you know, add a... So the thing with Carputer, why that sort of failed, is because the chip shortage pushed Raspberry Pi prices, you know, up to like 4 or 5 times their normal price. You know, instead of, I think I got that 8 gig Raspberry Pi 4 for like $75 or $80, and now they've been like $300 if you can even get them. So that kind of stopped that business. Fiverr, you know, people kept just wanting to message me more than just click buy, and for various reasons, it's just not, it's a very low margin space as it is, and going back and forth with customers just wasn't factored into that pricing. So I actually ported my Fiverr services to Shopify, set up a website with my documentation for, you know, being my mentorship student, and that would have been using Clojure, which is probably my strongest language. And so I could set that back up with Python and show a lot more examples of the work that I've done. So that's something I could do that would not involve coding. You know, Substack, sort of hard to convince people that a homeless software developer who is actually not living on the street anymore but still calling himself homeless, you know, now it's an even more pathetic situation, which is domestic abuse, and it's sort of the thing that, well, if I talk too much about it, then, you know, like I said, they're looking for ways to, you know, basically it's a defamation lawsuit waiting to happen. Like, I'm already probably beyond the threshold for claiming to be living in domestic abuse, but, you know, not looking forward to that. And, you know, having been canceled, you know, that sort of by definition means you don't have a place in the mainstream anymore. Maybe there's like alternative people who would listen, but enough to, you know, it's not really whether it's enough money or not, it's about whether it can get me to a point where I can afford food before I run out of money for food. So, I mean, in a way, Patreon is the option of desperation. and just like sharing my process as I try to figure out how to get profitable is its own little niche in a way, but I don't want to like sit here and rely on pity. You know, I'd rather actually be doing things that, you know, like if I could code here, then my Patreon could be a lot more interesting. And I'm not just like making an excuse, you know, oh, I can't code here because as an excuse to not do a Patreon on coding, for example. Like, I've been doing open source my whole life, including the beginning of this channel. Why would I stop now? I would love to be doing that. It's just that I need to protect my intellectual property from a possible hostile situation that I'm in. So yeah, getting back on Shopify. Now, Shopify does cost, I think, $9 or $14 a month. So I'd have to be relatively sure that I was going to make some sales. I've done some other stuff too. I don't want to put all my sauce up here, but I've done other things beyond this. All of those things requires, you know, like at least $10 a month worth of subscription fees. So $10 a month is definitely cheaper than $5 a day. So I mean, it's like theoretically, it's plausible. You know, I could sit down here and build a social media brand on Twitter and YouTube and start, you know, messaging people. So that's going to take at least a couple weeks to get going. Like if I were to say that's my new job, I'm going to do that full time. You know, I could potentially do that, and it would probably take like 2 weeks before I send the first DM. Because you gotta, you know, start your account, start following people, start interacting with people so they know who you are, and then you DM them. You don't just follow and DM, right? So I mean, I could start the brand right now, start following people, start interacting with people, and then in like 2 weeks start sending DMs. Now we're getting right up on Christmas at that time, so we'd probably set up any meetings that we were going to set up for beginning of January. That's just how it is. So, I mean, I'd have basically now until the new year to just follow, interact with people before I start sending DMs. And it would sort of be, you know, like personally I don't celebrate the holidays, but I know most people do. And so, you know, it'd basically be send a message in like 2 or 3 weeks, or like follow people for like a week, start messaging people that I followed after like 2 weeks, so there'd be like another week of messaging people, and then, you know, setting up calls for like the first week or two of January. And so that would be, you know, maybe I could get a few grand a month freelancing gig there where I help them, you know, migrate their software here or there. You know, the main thing I'd want to be conscious of is not making agreements that would threaten my intellectual property. And so there, you know, one client would get me past this threshold. Because yeah, it's pretty pathetic that $5 a day for coffee is a existential threat. You know, it's a cost that I cannot endure any longer. It's really pathetic. But yeah, so I guess we're coming up on the hour mark, which is surprising. It's actually probably less useless of a talk than I would have thought. And last night's talk was an hour, and I was talking at like 1,000,000 miles an hour. So, Yeah, I mean, like the current brand, this iSpooge Daily brand, it's probably not good to freelance off of. This is more of a content creator, blogger brand than a commercial brand. You know, yes, I talk about open source. You know, yes, I engage with technical people a little bit. Yes, I do even use my rare first name on it, which one could say is a huge mistake. But just for political reasons, again, I keep my first name on there. Basically, I can assert I've always had my first name on this account, and I've had issues with the past employer, and you know, I know how narcissistic abuse works. That's another thing that I talk about here, and any lawyer in zealous defense of their client is basically going to use narcissistic abuse on you. It is just, you know, kill, steal, destroy tactics, unfortunately, and so I know how that stuff works all too well. And, you know, I need to be able to say that I've always had my real name on this account for reasons of avoiding optics that narcissists are so good at creating with their word spells and magic. So, basically need to keep iSpooge Daily with my first name, but that doesn't mean that I can only have one brand with my first name, right? So, yeah. And yeah, I'm supposed to move in silence, but, you know, like, their lawyers do know my first name, so they have stalked me. They have, you know, done zealous defense of their client. So, you know, basically these are the options for creating a sustainable online business. Freelancing would be enabled through setting up a new professional brand. I can't be hired in for insurance reasons, but I might be able to convince someone to freelance with me. Maybe I would not disclose that they're my clients, just to save the client's reputation, because like transitive guilt is a thing that I talked about in the last stream that's online, which is about basically being canceled. I think the title is getting a job with a domestic abuse charge, which I haven't domestically abused, but it's just kind of like that's like the most common thing that people might be searching for. Like, not a lot of people know what workplace violence is. Obviously, HR departments do. And if you've got domestic violence on your record, then you're more likely to commit workplace violence. That goes back to that whole insurance thing. So if you have actually got workplace violence, that shows that, you know, you're willing to take it into the workplace, not just keep it behind closed doors where if you're a man, you can get away with it, allegedly. And then if you Google my name, too, which is a rare name, it actually says that that charge is family violence. So it's like, oh my God. So they Google me and they find out that I'm guilty of family violence, the workplace. The background check comes back and says I'm guilty of workplace violence, even though neither of these are true. It's total fabrication set up by their lawyers. But yeah, so looks like we're at about an hour. So that seems like a good amount of time to shut off. So I'm going to be thinking about what I can do with my different brands. And I'll probably be streaming more now that I can't go to coffee shops. I got to do more stuff like this. So thanks for joining. Looking forward to seeing you again. Ciao.